WNST, tasks, knees, flags, patriotism, and open discourse here this week. So more than just the toy department as we get ready for the Major League Baseball playoffs next week, and, of course, college football and Pittsburgh week around here. I thought we would invite one of our defending champions on out of the fighting city of Detroit, Michigan. He has covered the National Football League for Sports Illustrated for a long period of time, has now made a switch over to theathletic.com and has covered the Detroit Lions there, but knows just a little bit about things going on around the league because he's been doing it a long time. He is now Chris Burke NFL out on Twitter, and we welcome him back in. And Jimmy Caldwell running you crazy out there? What's happening out there, Chris?
I think it's hard for Jim Caldwell to run people crazy. He's about as low-key a guy as you're going to get in the NFL. So, good man,
yeah, Jim Caldwell.
Yeah, very good man.
Well, and got the team playing okay right now.
Too.
Well, yeah, and the quarterback's got $1 billion contract too. They feel like they're married there, and the matriarch of the family has things a little bit more calm there. And I guess things won't be calm. They're the one place that never sniffed a Super Bowl, all that stuff, that heaviness that goes along with the franchise. But 2-1, nice start, and a lot to prove this week in the Glass Menagerie up there in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, it kind of probably should have won that game against Atlanta, but sort of interesting to see how that one ended. There's been kind of this shift. They got the ball down 4 with a couple minutes left, and you almost expect them to win those games at this point because of what Matthew Stafford's done and because of how good they've been late. So that alone is sort of a hint to the shift in culture that's come with Stafford and Caldwell together that that it's still not a shock to see them lose in kind of mind-bending fashion because that keeps happening too, but they're certainly a lot more competitive on a consistent basis than they have been.
Well, and I guess, it all falls on Stafford, right? And this goes back to my boy Jimmy Schwartz running the place around there and having a quarterback that hasn't matured yet. You have Matt Ryan in Atlanta. Mike Smith has been run off now. And, I guess for a lot of these other aging quarterbacks, and we're going to see one in Ben Roethlisberger this week, there's questions out about Joe Flacco, certainly, Carson Palmer, the way he played the other night, that we're starting to see some aging of that next level of quarterback below Brady, who feels like he's never going to age. I mean, Eli Manning looks like he's getting older every week right now too, right? But in this case, there's the Staffords and the Ryans who are still thought to be in or entering or in that blossoming period of their career, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned Schwartz. I mean, he kind of caught it right before Stafford really took off, and I don't know if you blame Schwartz for him not taking off earlier or not, but I think he's a guy that probably will do better at his second stop as a head coach whenever that happens than he did in his first stop. But yeah, it is interesting. It's been Manning, Roethlisberger's been bad. Phillip Rivers has been bad. I mean, we are seeing certainly, it's not just the quarterbacks. Obviously there's other problems with some of those teams, but it has been kind of interesting to watch which quarterbacks are struggling because a lot of them you wouldn't necessarily expect to be struggling. And it's, it's week 3, and they're down to 2 undefeated teams in the NFL. So I think it's going to be one of those seasons where week to week it's just really hard to predict what's going to happen. And a lot of that goes back to that, the game's so much driven by the quarterback position, and there's so much inconsistent play coming from that spot right now.
How about the weirdness of the end of the game and the snap taken away?
For the Lions?
Yeah.
Yeah, they really have a way of finding these unusual spots in the rule book, man.
Such as the Honolulu Blue, right?
Yeah, I think the rule to some measure makes sense. That if they had Mark Golden Tate down there, I think it would have been a scramble to get another playoff. They might have been able to do it. It probably would have been, line everyone up, snap it. Stafford tries to sneak his way in. That's probably about all you would have had time to do. They might have been able to do that. I think it's weird to have a rule like that in that hurts a team when essentially, the officials are admitting they made a mistake on the play at first. That's what caused the runoff, and that's what caused the change. They're saying we got the call wrong, and then adding on the 10-second runoff. So I think it's sort of an odd rule. It's not a new rule. That's the rule, and I think they've, as Jim Caldwell said after the game, they administered it correctly. It's just I think if there was a complaint for the Lions, it was more in the actual spot of it. I mean, I think you saw Golden Tate's knee down, and he was a little short, but it goes back to, at what point does he have possession of the ball? At what point are you making that declaration that everything's been completed? I mean,
well, yeah. Where is possession? You've got 32 head coaches with 32 different answers on what is a possession, right?
Right, and that's what I mean. You're spotting him exactly as the ball hits his hands and as the defender's touching him on the back and as his knee's down. It all happened in one frame if you watch that replay back. But the next frame, he's rolling over, the defender's off of him, his knee's up off the ground. So it really could have gone either way. I think given everything we know about the rule book and given how that play looked, they probably got it right, but you also can understand why the Lions were a little frustrated after.
Chris, we've come a long way where we're, arguing plays at the end of the game and having outrage about officiating or fairness or replay or possession. We've come a long way from those kind of arguments to where we are now, where 32 groups of fan bases in 32 cities are boycotting this, protesting this, burning that, want that statue down. All the things, all the outrage that is going to come, quite frankly, from the right, because that's where a lot of this sort of emanates at this point politically. But for the players to be pulled into this thing, for the league to be pulled into this thing, I have never, and you've followed the league a long time, I've never seen a more unified front. And look, for the Daniel Snyders and the Jerry Joneses and the Bob Krafts who've buddied around with Trump and who've stroked multi-million-dollar checks in some cases for all sorts of things from inauguration to election committee issues, it is very, very difficult to take a stand against him. But this is a spectacular time, I think, around NFL management and coaches and black coaches and white coaches and black players and white players and east and west and left and right. Everybody's going to be heard from here. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a great example. We play them this week. Villanueva's a patriot, a decorated war veteran and a guy that's served his time and, comes out, salutes the flag, has to apologize for it. Roethlisberger has to apologize for not saluting the flag. Tomlin's trying to get unity, didn't get that. And then they go out and they get their ass kicked in Chicago. On top of that, the Ravens took a knee at 9:30 in the morning and then never got up off the knee to even play football over in London, and the fan base is all up in arms. Every two teams is going to have to deal with that sort of kind of storyline this week, especially the teams that lost last week.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes from here. It's not going away. I think, like you said, though, this isn't a thing where every single player and every single coach and every single owner, voted for Clinton in the last election. There certainly are players in those locker rooms that would consider themselves on the right and voted for Trump and still support Trump. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes. That a lot of
most other workplaces, by the way, Chris, right? Most other workplaces, right?
And so a lot of this has become this weekend became as much about support for the sport of football and support for the league and the organizations as it was about what the initial protests were about and what Colin Kaepernick took the knee for. So I think, like you said, that it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. I think it's been important and will continue to be important to hear from the players who do participate in the protest during the anthem, not just kneeling down or locking arms or whatever, but explaining why they're doing it and what they're hoping to accomplish. I think that we've seen a lot of players do that. I do think it's unfortunate to have a guy like Villanueva get kind of caught in the middle here, because I think if anyone deserves a pass on their motivations and deserves to do whatever they want before a game, it certainly is someone who's not just playing football but has served his country. And so I think that was a little unfortunate to see him kind of dragged back into a point where he was apologizing because because Ben Roethlisberger in essence said that the team kind of screwed up that whole situation before the game. So I think it is going to be, I don't think we'll see the owners participating as they did this week. Jerry Jones taking a knee and all the other owners locking arms with the players. I don't think we'll see that necessarily on a week-to-week basis, but I do think we'll continue to see probably more and more players participating in taking a knee before the anthem. I think hearing crowds boo when they do that to a large extent, only reiterates the reasons that they're doing that in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, again, I think it'll be interesting to see where this goes. But like you said, the NFL from the top down now has taken this as an opportunity to kind of unite against a cause. And again, where does where the league maybe wants to take this is probably different from where, Colin Kaepernick wanted to take this at first. So it's still a lot to unravel and figure out in terms of how this all is going to play out.
He is Chris Burke, NFL out on Twitter, longtime NFL insider, now covering the Lions out in his hometown of Detroit for The Athletic and The Athletic DET. Tell everybody about The Athletic and what you guys are trying to accomplish there. You made a move very recently here in the last couple of weeks to go from doing national to just covering the Lions there, but The Athletic has a lot of mojo going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty interesting. I hope readers are finding it pretty interesting. It's sort of similar, honestly, to what I've been doing with the MMQB and Peter King over at Sports Illustrated. It's a lot of more in-depth kind of analysis, not a lot of, quick. We're not rushing to get post up. We're not necessarily chasing page views. We're trying to dig a little deeper than maybe the typical beat writers have the time to do and give fans sort of a unique glimpse. I mean, from my perspective, a lot of that is trying to dive into the film a little bit and get the players to talk about X's and O's more than they normally would, and looking at some of the numbers and going into the analytics side of things. So I think it's interesting. I mean, like I said, I'm in my second week, so still trying to figure out exactly what it's going to be. But, it's subscriptions. It's no ads on the site. You're not going to get the autoplay videos popping up at you if you buy the subscription. So hopefully it works. I mean, it's definitely a kind of a very journalism-driven enterprise, and hopefully, I think there are a lot of people in the field that are hoping it works, because if it does, it would sort of prove that people are still willing to take the time to read insightful, thoughtful articles.
Well, that's what I try to do on the radio too. In a week of outrage, people need something intelligent. That's just and I only seek out intelligent people like yourself to have as guests on our station. And I think it's a time where people are seeking the refuge of quality, insightful thought on any topic, whether it's, if I want to learn how to, cook a pasta primavera, you know what I mean? That, I'm going to go get the best chef, and I'm going to go get a real expert on teaching me how to do that, or teaching me more about something that I want. I think the internet's kind of wonderful that in a lot of ways. He's Chris Burke, NFL. So, for your division and for the NFC North, it's really weird here because this game, I don't want to say it's like all the marbles or whatever for the Ravens and the Steelers, because look, man, the Ravens still have to go out to Minnesota and play, in Green Bay and Nashville. They got to go out to Oakland next week and play. The Ravens have really tough road games, and they don't play well on the road, and they just stunk the joint up. They got injuries everywhere. But the one thing in our division, the Bengals and Browns aren't coming. You know what I mean? It's week 4, and they're sort of DOA. I mean, it's one of these two teams is going to represent the North Division, whether that's with 8 wins, 10 wins, 11, whatever that number would be. But both of these teams are on the scuffle right now. No other division has that going on. I mean, the North maybe even more so now that the Bears have beaten the Steelers, that it looks like it's a little bit of a catfight there, and that there's no really good team out of those teams, but someone's just trying to get the 9 or 10 wins, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, in the AFC North, at least, that's why this game's so big, because the Browns are still doing their thing. I mean, I think that they're improving, but certainly they're going to be a 2 or 3 win team, I think, this year again. The Bengals stink. I mean, and that's coming off a week that they should have won in Lambeau Field, and then they blew that game, and that, I think, goes back. We keep thinking every year is the last year with Marvin Lewis. I think this is almost certainly the last year Marvin Lewis is there, so they're headed towards who knows what in the next year. So that's why this is important. Ravens and Steelers don't play again until mid-December. If one of these teams sweeps that head-to-head, I think that's probably your division winner. So you certainly want to get the first one, and I think you're right. I think it is clearly going to be those two teams, and neither have looked all that good. I mean, Pittsburgh looked all right beating Minnesota, but that was down to its third-string quarterback, and Baltimore looked good in the first week, but Cincinnati is bad. So who knows? And so, yeah, same thing. I think It is sort of similar. NFC North, I mean, I think the NFC North is going to wind up being those three teams at the top. I don't think Chicago's going to be there for the long haul. They got the one over Pittsburgh, but, I don't think they're good enough to hang in that race. But I don't know, really, across that conference, other than the Falcons, I don't even know which teams you would say are really good. I think there's a handful of teams that are pretty good, and the Lions, Vikings, and Packers are all in there, but no one else has really separated themselves to get up to that next level. I mean, I think it's clearly the Falcons right now, and then the Cowboys look like contenders again, and a handful of other teams. But I think that's kind of the challenge right now on both sides of it. The Chiefs have been good, the Falcons have been good. Those are your two undefeateds, and everyone else has had at least one really awful game.
Well, and the Panthers, I mean, obviously their awful game this week, but the Falcons keep chugging along, Chris. I mean, we talked for 9 months about how would they react to this horrific. I mean, you and I were there. We saw it all kind of unfold, and that's a very, very difficult thing to come back from. Boy, the Falcons have come back punching. I mean, Dan Quinn, he can coach some football now, can't he?
Yeah, I mean, and I think you got to give credit to Steve Sarkisian too, who stepped in there for Kyle Shanahan. That's an offense that the way that they rolled last year, you make a change up top with your play caller. Certainly, there's a possibility that it all kind of regresses to the mean, and it hasn't happened so far. I mean, they still look very dangerous, and that's even some weeks not getting a ton out of Julio Jones. So again, I think that right now they're pretty obviously the class of the NFC, and looking at their schedule, they're probably going to be 5-0 going into when they go to New England in October. And it is impressive. I think it does a lot. It speaks a lot to their coaching and just sort of what they've built there, that they've come out and been able to start the way they have. But again, all three of their wins are against the NFC North, and we were just talking, how good is the NFC North? I don't really know. I don't think anyone really knows right now. So maybe those are really good wins. Maybe, the Packers win the division at 9-7, and that division doesn't look quite as good. But yeah, I mean, the Falcons to me, until someone goes out and beats them and does so kind of handily, I think you've got to consider them the best team in the conference.
He is Chris Burke, NFL, out on Twitter as well as at The Athletic, DET. That means Detroit. Covering the Lions out there for The Athletic. Last thing for you, I'll let you roll. On your division in the Packers, when I look at it, I would say, well, the Packers have to be the favorite. I'm sure Vegas saw it that way because of Aaron Rodgers. Then they go out and slap around, much like they did for long stretches last year, and look suspect defensively, amongst other things. And they're not going to be a 13 or 12 win team. I don't see them being that this year, but you always sort of want to rate them ahead just because of the quarterback they have there, and it hasn't worked out. I mean, they came a bad kick away from being 1-2 right now and losing to Marvin, as you pointed out.
Yeah, they really should have lost that game, and you're right. I think it's mainly because you just think, all right, well, Aaron Rodgers is there, so they're going to be in most of the games, and the defense, in theory, on paper, the defense looked better coming into the year. Maybe it turns out to be better, but it hasn't been so far necessarily. Atlanta put up 34 on them, and Cincinnati moved the ball pretty effectively for the first three quarters at least in that game. So. And they've got some tough games on their schedule. Baltimore's got them later in the year. They go to Pittsburgh. They still go to Dallas. I mean, they're going to have some games where you could see them slipping up. And I don't know I agree with you. I don't think that's a 13-3 team. I mean, I think that the NFC North winner is probably going to be 10-6, somewhere in that range, because you can kind of poke holes in every one of the contenders. But you always kind of circle back, and it seems like most years we always wind up with the teams that have the best quarterbacks are the last ones standing. And so, when Aaron Rodgers is throwing the ball around there, it's hard to kind of count the Packers out entirely. I assume they'll still be playing in January, whether it's as a wild card or as a division champ. And, you never really want to see them in January just because of Rodgers.
Chris, good luck with your new assignment out there and all things Detroit Lions. You see my boy Ricky Wagner. Tell him I said what's up. I got a lot of friends on that squad over there. I mean, we have Baltimore guys on that squad as well on the special team side, and then the linebacking core there. Well, I'm looking up down at the rosters. There's a lot of purple going on out there that Caldwell brought along, right?
Yeah, seems like that always had a lot of purple and gold, and now it's starting to see a lot of guys that the GM Bob Quinn knew from New England. So it always seems to these guys always seem to bring in people they're comfortable with, and I guess it makes sense. But yeah, Wagner was a big pickup for them, and like you said, there's a few other guys that have gone through that Ravens organization for sure.
Hey, man, great having you on. Take care of yourself and enjoy covering the Lions. We'll check back in again with you in a couple of weeks. I mean, neither one of us have to worry ourselves with playoff baseball here this year, so we can focus in October, right?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me again.
See you, Chris. Always a pleasure. Chris Burke, one of our favorites. He is Chris Burke, NFL, out in Detroit. He covers the Lions and the NFL for The Athletic, DET. That's The Athletic Detroit. You can go to theathletic.com and check that out as well. I'm in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. each and every morning. It is the WNST Morning Newspaper, all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. Last but not least, our breaking news is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. That happens on the WNST Tech Service. And even when it's bad news like Brent Urban, we do get that out to you first. You'll get all the injury stuff this week as we get ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're talking knees, we're talking Steelers, we're mixing a little sports, a little politics, some thoughts, as well as getting ready for the Caps, the Major League Baseball playoffs, the Orioles offseason. Terps don't have a quarterback. We got a lot going on around here. I am Nestor, and I am a very available individual out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and you can always email me, nasty@WNST.net. We also stream live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.